Hey everyone, and welcome back to SkySkill Hub's Introduction to Web Development course. And in this video module, we're going to be doing something very important, which is a final project. So the final project is where we're going to design a Netflix clone landing page that will enable you to practice all that you've learned in this course in CSS. So without wasting much time, let's get into it. So first of all, we're going to go into our VS Code, and I have a plain empty HTML page. And we're going to start coding from there with our HTML. So the first thing you need to do is to have your doc type HTML. So the next is the HTML tag, which is where everything should be inside on the web page. Now, after this, the next thing you're going to have is the head tag. The head tag is the part section of your HTML page that contains the meta information and all the stuff that you don't see on the web page. So we're going to say meta name equals to viewport, right? And then we'll say content and this equals to width, device width. Then next we're going to have is an initial scale. Initial scale equals to 1.0, right? And then we close the angle brackets. Okay, so the next thing we have here is link here. We're going to link our CSS page, as we all know, because we want the stylist to work. And the rel attribute gets the style sheet property. And then next is the href. And href, we say we put our CSS, skyscalehub.css, and then we close. Next we have here is the title tag, and we can say Netflix clone, right? Then we save. Next thing we're going to do is to come into the body. So in the body, I have a div here. So the first div I have is a div class of top heading, right? And so I enter, and next I'm going to have another div of top. So this is the project we're going to be working on this page in this video. Now this project is a Netflix clone page, so you can see we have unlimited movies and TV shows and more. Watch anywhere, cancel anytime. We have an icon here, we have language selection here, we have a sign in button, we have get started here. So basically this is everything that we are going to be building in this page. So with this, we are going to be putting our classes in our HTML, and we're going to try and write this so that we can style it. So that's what we're basically working with. So let's continue, and I'll be guiding you through the different parts as we're going into it. So now we have another div inside here, and it's going to be of class top, right? Now next we're going to do is another div, and it's going to be of class logo, because that's where the logo is going to be, right? And the logo div itself is going to be separate on its own. We don't want to put anything inside it. We're going to leave it inside the top div. So immediately under the logo div, we're going to come for another div. Alright. We're going to say class right. So for class right, next thing we're going to do is inside the same div, we're going to put a class of another div, and this div is going to have a class of language. And this particular div we're talking about is this area on the web page where you can change languages, right? So we're still in the header part of our project. So when we have this, inside this now, we're now going to put in the place where you can select your language. So we can say select, right? And this is the select tag in HTML. And we're going to choose the options we want. So option, and we can then say English, Then the next one down, we put another option, and then we can say Hindi, that is Indian. And then we can decide to say something else, right? We can decide to say French, right? So the next thing we're going to do now is under this select, we're going to leave the language div, right? We're going to go under the language div, and we're going to put the sign in button. So we're going to create a class and a div, sorry, and then the div is going to have a class of sign in. Okay, so when it has a class of sign in, we're now going to say sign in. And when it signs in, we can simply just come here and then go. So we're going to go under this div. So we're going to leave 3 closing divs, right? So 1, 2, and 3. So don't get confused, because we're basically leaving the div class of top, right? So you can use these lines to actually trace exactly where you are. We're done with the top part of the page, so we're going to leave this part, and we're going to come under the class of top, and then we're going to continue. So we're going to start another div, and this div is going to have a class of heading. And in the class of heading, we're going to have an h1, which is going to be where we're going to write the unlimited movies that you saw. So unlimited movies, watch anywhere, ready to watch, enter your email, right? So we can say unlimited movies, TV shows, and more, right? So then the next thing we're going to have here is the H3, right? And for the H3, we can say watch anytime, watch anywhere, cancel anytime. Okay, that makes sense. So next thing we're going to do is to put an h4 tag. Now the h4 tag says ready to watch, just like we had on that page. Ready to watch. And we'll have a question mark. Enter your email to create or restart. So just type along your membership. Okay, so this is the h4 tag, right? And then we're done with it. So we can just look at the div for heading, right? We're done. So the next thing we're going to do is to come under it. So let's go to the page, and you can see exactly where we just finished. So these are unlimited shows, watch anywhere, cancel anytime, then ready to watch, enter your email to create or restart your membership. So now we're going to this part where you can basically add your email address and then sign in with the get started button. So basically, when we come under the heading tag here, we're basically going to put our own styles inside it. So first thing I'm going to do is to press enter, and really under it I'm going to have a div, right, with a class of search, and this div with the class of search says div. We have another div inside with an ID attribute, and this ID we're going to make it input search, right? So this second div is basically going to be what is exactly the search part. That's why we're giving it an ID, so that we can style this particular place like exactly, and that's what we want. So with an ID of input search, we now enter. So next thing you're going to do is to put a paragraph tag, and we'll give it an ID, and the ID says email, right? And then we want to say email address. Then there is a input tag I'm going to put here, input type of email, and then placeholder of, let's say, abc@gmail.com. Okay, so the placeholder, as you can remember, is basically what is going to always be showing there on the form once you come to it, before you put in your own data, right? So it's very important to make sure that your placeholder is user friendly, so that it's not aggressive to your users. So now we've finished the div of input search, and this is basically what we did: email address, placeholder. So if you come to the page, you can see their own placeholder here is email address too. So the next thing that we're going to do is to try and create this button, this red button we have here, right? So we're going to start with the button. So we can now say button open, or we can now say get started, because that's what's inside, right? And then next thing we can do is to make sure that we close this div here, because this is the div under it. So now we can save our page. So now we'll have the top, which is styling the top class, and we're going to give it a display of flex, right? We're going to say display flex. Next thing we're going to use is justify content, which is part of the flex box we learned, and then we say space between, right? Then the next is align items, and we're going to have them aligned at the center. Next is height. We're going to have a height of 70 pixels, and we're going to check everything we've done. And we'll have padding. We're going to have a padding of 5 pixels for top or bottom, and then 30 pixels padding for left and right. Now when you save and you go to the web page, you're going to see that, hey, we've moved this to the right where we wanted to say sign in. So next thing we're going to do now is to continue. So here we can see that we have a class of logo, and the logo has the logo for Netflix basically. Yeah. So the next thing we're going to do now is to style it. So we're going to say dot logo, and we're going to give it some background image. Now I remember teaching the background image property in the CSS, and I remember teaching you about images here when we worked with this image that we have here to create background image. Now we basically need to create another one. So basically I'm going to show you how to add your images into your VS Code again. So first of all, you're going to go to the place where the resource or the image is, right? We're going to find the particular image that was used. So we're going to be looking at the final logo. So what we're going to do now is to reduce this here, try to minimize this, and then we're going to take the final logo and paste it on our desktop. So we're going to go to our desktop and paste it. So we're going to look for it on our desktop, and we're going to put it into our VS Code, right? So we're going to say final logo. Okay, so we've located our final logo here, and what I basically want you to do is open your VS Code, minimize it a little bit, and drag this and drop it here. Now you've dropped it in here, you can basically see that, hey, this is the Netflix logo. So the Netflix logo is here, and we're going to continue working with this now. So now we've put the Netflix logo here into our folder which we're working with. Can then close it and decide to continue. So the background image property works like this. I remember you have your URL and then brackets, and then basically you have your commas, and then you have your slash. So we can say final logo.png. So now the final logo, we've already put it inside here, and we're going to save and see how it looks like on the web page. Suspected as much. Let's try to see if we can get the name better this time. So we say background image, URL, final logo, URL. So final logo.css. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is the background size. I'm going to say cover, right? After the background size, we're going to have a width of 140 pixels. Next, we're going to have a height of 30 pixels, or let me make it 40 pixels, right? And after this height, I'm going to say object fit, and for the object fit, we're going to say cover. So we save, and then you can see that our Netflix logo has appeared here in the way that we want it to be. So let's continue working on our page. Now, you do realize that since we're working here, we'll always put this on a zoom so that you students can always see what we're doing. But if we basically reduce the size of our web page, you can see that everything is actually designed the way we want it to be. It's actually a much more visually pleasing website. But because it's zoomed in so that you can see everything, it all looks cramped up. So let's continue. So next thing we're going to work with after this is the right class. So we're going to style it. For right, we're going to have display of flex. After display of flex, we'll have the justify content. And justify content says that he wants to be at the center because we want all that text and everything there to come to the center, because that's basically how the Netflix page is designed. So after displaying justifying content to center, we're going to try something else. We're going to say align items, and from there we're going to take them to the center. We can then save. So next thing we're going to do is language. Now for the language class, we're going to say width property. We want to specify it. Remember when we learned about width and height, and then we're going to say we want the height to be 25 pixels, right? I'm going to say exactly how it's going to play out. We want the background color to be black for this language class. The next thing, we want the font size to be 15 pixels, right? 15 pixels. Then padding, we say padding should be 5 pixels. Next thing is border. So border, I say 1 pixels solid white. Now we can basically see that we've styled language. So let's keep moving forward. Let's go to our web page and basically see. So you can then see language exactly the way we want it to be. So we've put a background color of black around it, put a width and a height, and we've put the font size and everything for it. So you can basically see how it is. So next thing we're going to do now is to work on the sign in class, right? For the sign in class, we're going to have a width of 80 pixels. After a width of 80 pixels, we're going to have a height of 35 pixels. And then background color, we're going to have a background color, nice background color of red, because that's how we want it to be. Then next, we're going to say our font size. Our font size is going to be 10 pixels. We don't want it to be too large or too small. So after styling the sign-in part, next we're going to have is the language and sign-in part. So in CSS, you can style like two classes if they are meant to share the same styles. You can style them together. So we can say this comma sign in, and we can open it. So for this, then we're going to have margin of 0 pixels and 10 pixels, right? Display of flex, and then justify content of center, because they are sharing properties I want to put these styles to. So we also want to align our items to center, which is the horizontal, and then color to white. We're going to save, and then you can basically see that the button is forming here. So now that we're done with this, we're going to basically continue with other classes. Now we're going to have language select. We're going to style the select tag that is inside the language class. So now we now say select, and we can say background color. And for the background color, we want it to have color of black, and then the border is going to be none. The next we're going to have is an outline, and for the outline we're going to say none. So color, we're going to say white. So for color we're going to say white, and then next we're going to do is a font size, and we're going to say 17 pixels. So we save, and we can go to our page, and we can see that okay, we've given this more styling and it looks better now, giving it a font size, color, and everything. So then now we're going to the background image part, and you can remember how I taught you how to write comments in CSS. So you basically have a slash, I have an asterisk, and we can now say background image parts, right? So asterisk, and then you can have a slash here. So under this background image parts, you're going to remember that the top heading class, right, is one of the first, or the entire first class that we have here. So for us to put the background image, we are going to put it with respect to this class because it's going to cover the entire website. So now we're going to do that. We're going to say top heading, that's dot top heading, and we're going to say background image now. And for the background image, we're going to say URL, but then we do not actually have the image. The last one we imported was for something else. So we're going to come and do the same thing here. We're going to come where we have the resource, and we'll see the background picture here. And we're basically going to drop it on the desktop, right? So when we go to our desktop, in our desktop, we can then minimize everything we have here and then look for a background picture. So we can then open our VS Code and then basically copy our background image here. Now we can close this so that it doesn't confuse us, and now we can specify the URL. So we can put our inverted commas and then say a slash, and then we want to look for our background color, our background image. I don't think we put it in well the last time, so I'm going to put it here exactly. So for our CSS now, we can then put a slash, a inverted comma, and a slash, and we're going to select background PNG. And when we save and go to our website, we can see that okay, the image has taken the background, but then it's not yet quite fit. So we're going to add some more styling to it. So we're going to say background size, and for the background size, we're going to say cover, and then the background repeats. For the background repeat, we are going to say no repeat. The next thing we're going to do is the height, which is 700 pixels. The height is 700 pixels. Then box shadow, we're going to say insert minus 250 pixels, minus 250 pixels, then 1000 pixels, and I'm basically going to show you what we're doing now. And then we'll have an RGBA, GBA, and we're going to specify the colors. We'll say 0, 0, 0. Now we say we have a 0.6, right? So next thing we're going to come down here, and next property we're going to put is the insert. So we don't actually close it yet, right? So we can then say insert. We just put enter so that you can see everything. So we say insert 250 pixels, and we say another 250 pixels, and then 1000 pixels. So we say RGBA 0, 0, 0, 0.6. So now we've styled our top heading, and we can then save and go to our page to take a look at what we've been doing. So now we can see that okay, our image is covering the page, right? It's covering the page in a nice way. So we basically continue. But before we can do that, let's look at the page where we like zoom out. So you can then see that the page actually looks better with the image when you zoom out. But then everything is the way it is because we want you to see our entire page clearly. So let's zoom in. So let's go back in. So the next thing we're going to be working with now is the heading. So for the heading, we can then basically say we want it to have a display of flex, and then we can say we want it to justify content center, right? And then align items to the center. So for flex direction, we're going to say column, and then the height, we're going to say 600 pixels. So we save. Next thing we're going to do is to come to heading, each one. So we're going to say a font size of 55 pixels. We're going to say a max width of 640 pixels. Next, we're going to say is a color of white, text, align, center. Okay, so now we're going to save this and we're going to look at the web page. So first of all, we're meant to actually style this. So we'll go to our web page and then we can then basically see that this has started aligning. But I think we gave a little too much gap between this and this. So let's see if I can drop the height of this from being 600 pixels. Let's say we want to drop it to 300. Yes. So this makes more sense now. Let me see how it will be when I drop the scale. Okay, not bad. Let's adjust it to something like 400 pixels, which is not bad when I reduce the scale. Okay, so let's continue. So next thing we're going to do here is to do a heading and h3 because they share some styles, right? So say heading, then h3. So open. So let's say font size, and we're going to say 35 pixels, right? And then next thing is color. We're going to say white. Then margin 20 pixels, 0 pixels. So we're going to save this, and then next thing we can go to is the heading and h4. So heading and h4 are also sharing some styles, right? So we can say h4. Then what we have is what? The font size, which we can select from here, and we can say we want it to be 20 pixels, right? Because we're basically trying to like increase the size of the fonts while we're making everything to work. I want the color to be white. So we're making the color of everything now white so that I can see the text clearly. And if you come to our page, you can now see that hey, everything is turning white. So next thing we're going to do is to come here, right? And then we can say search. So we can then say display of flex. I remember the search class, which is where we're going to search for stuff on the website. So we can then say justify content. And for the justify content property, we want it to be center. Next, we're going to have is align items property. And we're going to have it to be center. Then we have margin. For margin, we're going to have it 15 pixels, 0 pixels. Okay, so everything is getting aligned now. But I basically want to work on this a little bit. Let me see if I can give it like 12 pixels and see how it will accept it. Okay, I'll take it back and save it. So what am I doing next now? So next thing we're going to do now. So if you come back to our HTML, you see the point where we are now. We're at this point where we have the search and then the input search is next. So the input search basically covers this form part, which is where we are right inside, right? So we're going to come back now. We're going to style it. So because it's an ID, as you can remember, it's an ID here. We're going to use a hashtag, right? We can say hashtag input search. So with input search, we can then say we have a width of 475 pixels. Next thing we can do is a height of 50 pixels. Again, we can say padding of 5 pixels, 20 pixels. Then next is the font size. The font size is 18 pixels, right? Then with the background color, we're going to decide to make it white. Next thing we're going to do is a display of flex, and then justify content to be center, and then flex direction is going to be column. So when we go to our page now, we're going to see how everything is. Now we're going to get everything here sorted out. Okay, so we know that our search and our button share some styles, so we're going to like put those styles together. So we're going to say search and button. We'll give some space and say button, right? Next is width. For this, we're going to say our width is going to be 180 pixels. We're going to say we'll have a height of 60 pixels. Next is a background color of red, and then border of none. Then font size. So font size we can have is 25 pixels, and then color is white, and then padding is 0 pixels, 6 pixels. Then we can close it in, then put colon here. So we go to our page and we're going to see the styles that we have now. So we can then see that our button is coming to life here. Get started. We can basically zoom in so that you can see everything, but the website will lose some shape. Okay, let's leave it like that. Next thing we're going to have is to style the input box, right? So when we style the input box, we're going to also style the placeholder. So remember the input box was an ID. So we can say input box colon twice placeholder. That is because placeholder is an attribute of it and we want to style it together. So this is basically how you style the attributes in CSS. So we say we want the font size to be 15 pixels. Then we can then close this. The next thing we're going to do is use a hashtag of email, and then color, want it to be hashtag of 4F4F4F4F, right? So it's like kind of an hash. So the next thing I'm going to do now is to style the input box, the one with an ID. So we say hashtag of input box, and then inside it we can say display of none because we don't want it to show. Next is an outline of none. Then we can say border none, and then font size 18 pixels. Okay, so now we can save and then look at our page. So now there's something you're going to notice, and it's basically that the email address part, which has the placeholder, doesn't look too good, right? So if you look at the other one, we can see, okay, this is email address, and then when you click it, you can basically see the placeholder. So let's come back to our Skyscale Hub here, and we're going to check just before it. So we want to have an ID of email address. So let's decide to bring this out on top here. So I can say Ctrl C and then save. So I can go back to my own page, basically bring it out here. So we can claim this right here and save it. So now I'm going to select and try to put some padding here. So when you're styling your HTML page, you have to be careful and watch your classes and everything so that you can understand exactly what you're doing. So here I'm going to go back to where we had the class for that particular place, which is the input search. So for the input search with ID of input search, I'm going to come back here and try to put in some width that's much larger. So for the width now, I'm going to say 475 pixels, and then we save it. I'll go back. You can then see that okay, it has given me exactly what I wanted. So now then we can save, and then we can go to our CSS. Now we've basically styled like most of the page here, and you can see that we have everything we need. You can then reduce the scale so that you can see the website completely. Yeah, this is basically the best scale. So we can see that our clone is coming up well and everything looks really nice. But then there's still something we have to do. And this is mainly to make our website responsive. So it's trying for the most part, but you can see that this particular stuff lags out here when we're working with it. So we're going to try to ensure that when we change screen sizes, that most of our elements or all our elements actually fit to the screen size. So we're going to write a comment here so that next time you're coding, you're going to remember. So we can say this is for media queries. Okay, so remember the syntax. So we're going to say add media screen and. So from here we're going to say and. Okay. We can now say maximum width. The maximum width we're going to work with here is 600 pixels. So for this, as you can remember, inside here we're going to do all the stylings for media queries we want. So the first is the heading and each one. And the heading and each one, we want to say that okay, when we're here, we want the font size to reduce, right? We don't want it to be that large. And so we want it to be 30 pixels. So if you can come up to where we had heading and each one before, you're going to see that there's a difference. So our font size here was 55 pixels, which is much larger. But now in our media queries, when the screen size reduces, we want it to be much smaller than it was before. And we're going to say we want our width to be 450 pixels. So the next thing we're going to do now is heading. Next thing we're going to do now is heading and H3. And with the heading and H3, we can then say we want to have a font size of 25 pixels. And then next thing we're going to do is a width of 400 pixels. So now we're going to have a heading class, and then next is a font size, right? And we're going to have an 18 pixels. Then from here we're going to have a text align center, and then we're going to have a width of 350 pixels. Now, next what we're going to do is to come to where there's a search. We're going to say flex direction. We want to have a flex direction of column, right? And we want to have to align our items to the center. So now we're going to say we want to style our input search. So to style our input search, we're going to have a width of 375 pixels. And then next we're going to have a height of 40. So remember, this is the set that usually extends to the edge of the page. So now we're reducing the size with the media query, so that once it comes up, we're going to be sure that okay, our page is going to respond to the size. So we can say button together with search. Sorry, we have to change this to curly brackets. And we can say width 150 pixels, and we can say height 40 pixels. Okay, so we can then decide to add some more styling for this. We can say we want to reduce the font size, right? So with the font size, we can then have 20 pixels, and then here we can have a margin of 20 pixels and then 0 pixels. So remember to put a semicolon and a colon itself. So we say margin. Okay, so now we've basically implemented media queries for the page. Let's go to our page and see how it looks. Okay, so now you can come to our web page and see what we've been able to build. We've basically built a Netflix landing page which has the logo. We have a place where you can select the languages. We have a sign in button. We have get started button. We have all our text here that we use the flex box to align, and we have the picture and everything. So in this particular video, we've actually done experiments with every single CSS property that we learned, almost all of them, apart from some like animations and the rest. And this video or project has basically helped you to understand it's important that you actually go back while building this project. I want to emphasize on it, and study as much as you can. So anything you don't understand, you can always go back, look at it and understand it, and you can actually like take the video over and over and build the project more than once to get yourself very acquainted to it. So now for our responsive design that we built, we can then basically look at it and then see that, okay, when we reduce the size of the page, we can see that this actually reduces, but then it's still overlapping to the other part of the page, which makes it look this way. So ID of input search, let's look at the input search and then see exactly how we're going to reduce it. So we have an ID of input search and we have a class of search. So class of search, ID of input search. So far so good, it looks okay. We have English, Hindi and French, and then it's aligned to the size of the web page as we're working with it now. So basically that's it for this video. If there's anything you do not understand, you can go back and try to understand it and then look on it and then code along as we're moving. Thank you for listening and paying attention, and I'll see you in the next one.